Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is an October 1st edition of the MSP Initiative, MSP Talk. We are officially in the last thread here of summertime, at least here in North America. And hopefully people are enjoying the beaches and the pools and the mountains and maybe just the staycation because, you know, everybody does their own thing. Some people do the backyard thing too, teach their own. We're going to go through some housekeeping, and then we're going to get on with some good stuff. So here we go. MSPinitiative.com. Here's everything that we do. This session is being recorded and will be posted here under sessions in both podcast and video format. So choose whichever fits you. If you're driving, podcast is probably better for you. Community Minds. We parked the tour bus after 3 years. We decided the audience of the almost 2,400 people that came out during tour bus time. We decided to do a totally educational event here in Denver, not next week, but the week after, August 14th and 15th. There are a lot of familiar faces and some industry experts you may not know that are on this list and workshops. So it's a very educationally focused event and a lot of networking time, and hopefully a cool city that's not 100 degrees because it's summertime. Totally free, by the way. So do have to get there, but there is no $3.99 registration fee. It is absolutely free for MSPs to attend. Please join us. MSPcommunityminds.com takes you to this landing page. Then we have our 3 remaining block parties of the year. We have a community boat party with our friends down at Taylor Business Group and the Big Conference. If you just happen to be in South Florida and you like boats and you're an MSP, you are absolutely able to come and join us. Again, 100% free to you as MSP, but you should definitely check out our friends over at Taylor Business Group and their conference. You may like to stop by anyway. Then we have DattoCon Miami. So if you're headed down to, hopefully not South Beach, but the conference there, we'll be doing a community block party at DattoCon like we've done in years past, 5 minutes away from the Intercontinental in Miami, which is where the event is being held for the conference. And then lastly is our big one at the end of the year in Orlando last year. If you missed it, this is where we brought in the All-American Rejects. And this year we'll very excited to announce who we have queued up. Stay tuned, but it will be a radio recognizable band. And we're, again, bringing that free to you, the MSPs. Absolutely 100% free. All you got to do is get some community offers, which are hookups from around the industry that some companies throw out there to take care of you. Feel free to stop by. And lastly is our industry calendar, which is just a whole bunch of stuff that's going on out in the industry. It's our homework for the year. If we're missing anything, feel free to submit your stuff. We already had some people send some stuff for 2024 because how about that? People do plan ahead. Just trying to keep everybody, on top of what's happening. That is all of the housekeeping here at MSP Initiative. Thank you for paying attention to that. All we're trying to do is work on the community angle of this whole operation because the sandbox is large and sometimes people forget this part of it. That being said, here is our guest for today. She's been on before, Kelcye. I know we've had a rash of people on from QuickPass, but they're all good in their own lanes and we want to talk to everybody in the community. Kelcye, actually, I'll let her, toot her own horn a little bit, has her own podcast along with her best friend in the industry, it seems like. So I'll let her talk a little bit about that. And then we'll actually go down that lane a little bit because that's the hard part of all of this, right? If you follow our friend Eric Bowles in the industry, he's the original kind of founder of Pax8 Studios. Man, every time I see this guy, he's telling people to just pick up their damn phone and just press record and see where you go. That can morph into many things, but we'll hear about how Kelcye and her partner in crime started something. And don't let me take your thunder, Kelcye. Why don't you go ahead and intro yourself? And anybody that doesn't know you, why don't you tell them a little bit about you?
Yeah, well, to start, you mentioned cities that are 100 degrees. Dallas, Texas, checking in. I believe it was 107 yesterday. So a backyard staycation is not really our vibe here right now. But we're making it.
Water, I hope.
Yes, lots of water. I'm always hydrated.
And
my name's Kelcye. I am the Community Engagement Manager with Cyberqp, formerly known as QuickPass Cybersecurity. And this is not my first time on, but it's always an honor to be included and part of this and to talk to the community in this way. this manner. I also thought that we were really, I thought I was getting the announcement of the special guest. I was like, wow, what a fun,
No, you are
fun
the
thing for me
special
to be a
guest.
part of, but you're good at keeping a secret, George. I'll give you that.
So you've been around the industry for a little bit, but you're actually kind of, for our, I would say a lot of people in MSP land are on the older side, not trying to make anybody upset, right? You're part of the younger crowd in the sandbox. So even though
am,
it's
yes.
your second stop in the journey, right? You're still like, you haven't been around forever and ever and ever, like some of the people that we see all the time. I think that was kind of the, inspiration for what became your podcast. Let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I haven't been around for 10, 15, 20 years. Obviously, I mean, I'm not old enough to have been around that long. But I have come in and I have joined forces with someone else who has also not been around forever. Just to give the complete backstory, Morgan McBride and we were at an event at a welcome reception, and we were just kind of looking around and we made eye contact with each other, and it just kind of, we grouped up and we were like, okay, I guess this is where people our age hang out. Like, I don't know, you look around and you feel a little bit isolated. And so we started a community webinar group with Taylor Thorson and Chandler Sabin, and it was called New Kids on the Flock. We did a once a month webinar focused on helping people who were newer to the industry, who maybe this was their first stop with the channel. And that was a super fun thing that we did. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And that has transitioned into a podcast that we do together, which is also a lot of work, but also a lot of fun. It is called Actually a Podcast. And we just get together and we talk about stuff. We are working on an Ask Us Anything episode right now. So we are taking questions from people in the industry who want to know things either about us or about work or whatever it may be. We have a form. I will eventually get it on LinkedIn. I know we've posted it before, but it could use a refresh. But yeah, we have a podcast. It's a lot of fun. Greatly enjoy it. And it's really fun to be able to be like, yeah, I have a podcast. It's fine.
Like the fashionable thing. So let me ask you this, right? So I remember listening to your very, very first podcast, and you're like, yeah, we just didn't feel like there was like a voice for like our lane, right? And we're like, okay. And then like, that's kind of like why, or like part of the reason why you started this, right? Like, let's just go back there, right? For a second.
Sure.
Like, why, do you feel people that are kind of, the younger people coming into the industry, right? And those entry roles or just like, kind of buckling in, and like all of a sudden this travel thing pops out of nowhere and you're just on the road for a long time. Like, kind of give us a little bit of a peek into why you guys thought, like, we just feel like there's not an outlet for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are on the road almost every week, at least a couple times a month, and you are surrounded by people who've been doing this with this group of people for years. They have stories that go way back. They have all these experiences and inside jokes. And so while you're seeing the same people every week, it can be still a little bit isolating to be like, okay, I don't have these shared experiences. I wasn't around for that. There are a lot of really great resources of podcasts, webinars, community calls, all sorts of things like that, that I feel I've definitely attempted to take advantage of and be part of, and share my voice, listen to what's being shared and take notes and, grow from that. But as far as actually being centered on being newer and learning these things as you go, and the people who've helped us out along the way, we definitely really like to spotlight who has been a good help, who has shared tips with us, anything like that. It's also, I think, helpful for people who are listening, who are newer, to be like, oh, this person was mentioned before, they helped with this. Like, if I ever need that kind of help, I can go. It's just been really fun to have our own platform and to share. I know obviously we work in IT, which is more of a male dominated industry. Which is fine. But a lot of the things are and this is not hating on anything, but there's like a beard banter thing that goes on. And, there was the beard shave and stuff. And it's like, we just can't be a part of that. Like we can cheer them on. We do. We love them. We love our bearded counterparts. But it's really nice to have a space where, we use the sparkle emoji a lot. I actually just got sparkly stickers. We just get to like be young and be girly and have fun with it. And it's a nice space to do that.
That's awesome. Let me pick your brain a little bit.
Okay.
Last time you were on, we talked kind of like, hey, how did you pick up some of the more technical stuff? And you should go back and listen to the first one, right? That was a lot of information. I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit away from that. What are the scary parts of the gig, right? Like, tell me, if you were to tell somebody net new coming in for the first time, here are some things that you ought to know and like pay attention to, and like best way to, deal with them. What does that sound like?
Yeah. So I've always considered myself an extrovert, but I have come to learn that maybe I am not so much that. Honestly, one of the scariest things for me is just going in, not knowing anyone. Lunches, like meal times, are honestly kind of hard. Like, you walk in carrying your food, and I feel like it transports you right back to like middle school. You're walking in the cafeteria and you have to be like, where am I going to sit? Thankfully, that has become not so scary, and I'm fine to sit down and just talk to people. But that's definitely like something. Anytime I have someone who's new, I tell them, like, find someone who doesn't have anyone sitting with them, find a familiar face, anything like that. Like, people are all super welcoming and warm. And it's more like you're just scared in your head. I'd say there are definitely scary things just with the job in itself of talking to people. You sometimes get people who want to trip you up, who want to be like, got you. Like, you don't know that. And it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to say, I'm not sure, but let's find out together. I think that is something that you can use to your advantage, for sure, of just being honest. Like, there's no shame in just, I don't know. Let's figure it out. So yeah, I'd say those are a little bit scary, but easily manageable.
Okay, there's some good tips. Let's talk about the traveling thing for a second, right? Like,
okay. Yeah.
You are in a role that keeps you, I feel like, on airplanes more than in your own car. I think at times. You haven't done any, I don't think you've done any international stuff yet, right? So it's been.
No, I have done Cancun, but because I live in Dallas, that's like an hour and a half. Like, it doesn't feel that intense. I speak Spanish, so like that's not a big scary thing for me either. Most of it's in English anyway.
Sure.
But yeah, the travel, so much of it is out of your hands, and it's like, I don't know. I think everyone that you're working with understands when you're super delayed. It just happens. There's not really all that much you can do. Thankfully, I don't have flight anxiety, but I know a lot of people do, and that's really hard to overcome. But technically, flying is safer than driving in your car. So,
what would you say, like, if you were to think about January till now, right? It's about 7 months. Worst travel story.
Oh gosh. The first one that comes to mind was getting stuck in Chicago. Just flights were getting canceled. There had to have been some major storm system. I honestly don't remember, but something was moving through. Everyone's flights were getting canceled, and they put me on a new flight, and that was Chicago to St. Louis. I got to St. Louis, and then my flight home got canceled. So I was in the St. Louis airport. They were like, well, if you end up getting stuck here, we'll give you a hotel voucher. The AC was out. So that was very not fun. And just flights kept getting canceled. I was on the last flight out of the day, and I talked to the woman working the counter, and I was just like, okay, what's the likelihood this flight's not going to make it? And she was like, honestly, I don't know. You might want to book like a Southwest flight or something. So I did book that Southwest flight. My flight ended up not getting canceled, and I was able to cancel the Southwest one and get a full refund because it was within a 24-hour period. But that one was definitely not a good time. I think the AC being out was probably the worst part, because like, you're already stressed and frustrated, and then you're hot and sweaty on top of it. That was just not a good time.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, we're gonna go off and do some personal stuff here. So apparently you're a big Taylor Swift fan, because apparently you're talking about that right before we came on. Anyway,
Yes.
I know you. I think you've seen her more than once this year.
No, I haven't. I mean, unless you count the ridiculous number of videos I watch online. This was actually my very first time seeing her. My best friend just moved to Seattle and she surprised me and bought the tickets a week before. So I booked my flight on my miles that I have hard earned working life on the road. And it was super neat. I don't know if you've seen the articles. Actually, I do know that you have, because you sent me one of them. Seismic activity was recorded from the shows, which is crazy to think about. I was wearing ear protection, so was my friend. It was very loud. This is what happens the year you turn 30. I'm not 30 yet, but I will be. We start wearing earplugs at concerts. Worth it. People were sitting there covering their ears, so I did not regret my decision to feel like a grandma and wear earplugs. It was a super fun experience, though. Greatly enjoyed it. I was telling Jen before we joined, I have turned into a friendship bracelet making machine. So I'm going to start making friendship bracelets to pass out at the booth. Exclusive, very limited release, special things to have.
It might be sparkly. Maybe.
Oh, absolutely will be sparkly. Come on.
If you kind of reflect back, right? I mean, this role is a little bit different than the last role you're in, just because I think your job's expanded a bit.
Yeah.
And then think forward now, right? So
Okay.
where does this go for you, right? If you were to paint your path forward, do you stay in the industry? And if so, what do you hope it to be? Or do you think that this journey leads you outside of the sandbox?
So that's a really interesting point. I will say that looking back, if I even look back to 3 years ago, I didn't know that a job like this existed. I couldn't have imagined it. I am really happy where I am and I love what I do. I think it's really neat that I get to go to all these cool places and hang out with cool people and eat really good food and talk to people about things that actually can help their businesses and their lives. And I love seeing the impact that we have on the people that we work with. Truthfully, looking forward, I don't know what it looks like. I don't plan on ever leaving this industry. I definitely feel like I've made a home here and I really like being here. And I like being able to start, I've already seen the transition to start helping people who are also joining. And I really like that as well, being part of that transition for people. Personally, I'd love to keep traveling. I'd love to keep speaking and having engagements like that. To mention Desiree Thomas, she told me last year that one of her goals in her career was to speak on behalf of herself and not the company that she represents. And I thought that was a really neat goal. She's actually doing it for the first time this week, which is really cool. I've definitely added that to my own list. Someday I will know that I've really established myself whenever I'm invited to speak as just me and not the company that I work for. You know, I love speaking for the company I work for. I don't really know what it looks like just yet, but I'm along for the ride and I'm having a good time.
That's fantastic. So you've obviously been given a ton of advice, right? Because you love advice. If you were to think of maybe a couple of things that you've gotten recently where you're didn't think of it that way, but absolutely advice that anybody should take and run with, what comes to mind?
Yeah. I would say I have a notebook that I actually write down advice in, and I just moved, so I have no idea where it is. So I can't even pull it out right now. My favorite piece of advice that I hold with me all the time is that other people don't know what you don't know. So anytime you're feeling kind of uncertain about what you're speaking on or what you're about to go talk to people about, the people that you're talking to don't know that maybe you're not an expert. Maybe you really only know what you're talking about there. That's okay. And I think that goes back to there's power in just admitting that you don't know and that you can figure it out together. But people don't know what you don't know is one that I hold with me a lot. I think there's a lot of power in kindness that is something you'll hear from almost anyone. It doesn't cost anything to be nice to people, and people remember how you made them feel more than what you did or what you said. I think probably my favorite piece was from Jimmy Hansel, whom I work with. It's just that being yourself gets you a lot further than you realize. People remember you and your personality, and, you know, again, how kind you are more than the technicality of what you're speaking on. The technicality can always be made up, but your kindness cannot be.
No, it's fair. Good points. If you were to like think about the profile of the people that you run into on a regular, right?
Mhm.
Do you see this industry getting younger over time, or is it getting a little bit older over time?
Well, I'd say I recently did MSP GeekCon, which for a lot of people was their very first
Event.
conference, their
Yeah.
very first time going to something like that. So that honestly was a bit of a younger crowd than what we typically run into, a little more green, for lack of a better word, on that. So that was a younger crowd, but some of the ones, I think it just depends on the kind of the community focus, because some of them are a bit older. I'd say I haven't really noticed a change in the time that I've been here. I think it's been a pretty good balance of older and newer, you know, and those people who are younger and older are looking for different things for their business. And so what they're coming to talk to us about is different, you know, their objectives. On the vendor side, I'd still say also, like, of people hiring in, I'd say it's a pretty even balance. Got a little bit here, a little bit there.
Okay. A lot of people definitely have a different idea of what they're trying to get out from an event, right? It seems like there's
Right.
a lot of events, keeps you on the road often, obviously.
It does.
Some people like the social aspect of it. Some people actually are going to learn something specific, right? Like they're like, hey, I need to do something about this in my business, and I'm going out there to figure out somebody who can give me an answer.
Yeah.
And some people are just like, yeah, you know, I come and I talk to a bunch of people, and like that's, you know, maybe not the formal content is what I'm after. It's more about who I'm talking to running into the hallway or at the bar.
Yeah.
You feel like the events need to be changed a little bit to cater more to a specific thing? Is it too much trying to be too much for everybody trying to get something rather than a specific outcome? Like I'm trying to figure out why there's this like sentiment out there that like the event system is broken.
That's interesting. I hadn't really heard that. But I will say one of my favorite questions to ask people at events is, why are you here? What are you hoping to learn? What are you hoping to gain? You know, maybe it's not something that the company I work for can help you with, but I know someone who can help you, you know, like you're looking to join things, whatever, meet George, like he's great for that. I do think that there are a lot of really broad topics covered. We just hosted our first hosted event, and it was a very specialized topic, and a lot of the feedback that we got on it was like, I love that it was just one topic. It was all focused on that. Like that was really great. So like that feels good to know that it was well received. While I understand that that's not necessarily feasible for everyone, I do think that that could be what certain people are looking for. Like, I want to go to an event that is strictly about this, and all the sessions are geared towards that. I definitely think that that would be beneficial. Also, for the people who like, it would be a waste of their time to go to something like that. You know, like, not that any of this is a waste of time, but sometimes your time could be better utilized elsewhere. So yeah, maybe more specialized is important, or at least nailing down what your goals are before you sign up to go to things, you know, and really going through the schedule, the agenda of what's going to be talked about. Typically, there's pretty good abstracts listed online as someone who has to submit those. It's a really good resource to go through and see what's actually going to be talked about and if it pertains to you and what you're looking for.
No, that's good. That's good advice. So obviously, you know, one of the things that you like about the fringe benefits of the gig is you do a lot of traveling. What cities that you've gone to this year that you're, you know, were maybe new to you and you're like, wow, didn't know that about this, would love to come back? What comes to
Yeah,
mind?
So I actually only have 2 new cities this year. I've been to all the other ones now, but it is Atlanta and Columbus, Ohio. I have done both. I think I have one more time in Atlanta this year. I did the World of Coke while I was there, and that was really neat to learn about Coca-Cola. I am Texan. I am a Dr. Pepper girl through and through. I've done the Dr. Pepper museums, but to see Coke's side of it was really cool. I always really like the people. Whenever I go places, you get the first interaction typically like out of your Uber driver from the airport. The colloquialisms, some of them are super chatty. Some of them, I mean, I know you're up there in the Northeast. I felt very scared in Ubers in the Northeast. Everyone likes to honk so much. But no, I really like the people and the food. I always really like the history, looking up, okay, what's popular here, what's the go-to, and maybe that's part of it too, is I do like history and I like learning, so it's always fun to read about wherever I'm going. I mean, my best friend just moved to Seattle. On our drive from California to Washington, I was Googling what's the state bird, what's the state flower, show me the flag. Ended up on like National Geographic for
By
kids.
the last Blockbuster?
No, I didn't. Where's that?
It was on the way. It was in Oregon.
Well, I'll get to go back to Oregon. We didn't stop in Oregon because she didn't want to run out of gas, because you can't pump your gas yourself there.
Oh, I didn't know that. Like New Jersey's that way. You can't pump your own
Yeah,
gas.
so Oregon actually just got rid of it like 2 weeks ago. But it was just something neither of us have ever had to deal with. And she was like, I'd rather just go all the way through. So we did.
Interesting. I've definitely got yelled at a time or two where I forgot I was in New Jersey and they're like, yo, can't pump your own gas. Oh, okay, my bad. Go ahead.
Well, and we learned why. It's like an insurance thing.
No,
it's cheaper for the gas
they're trying to keep
station.
people hired.
Okay. Well, we read it's cheaper for the gas
how
station to insure if only their employees are doing it than it is.
How many times have you put gas in your, like 1,000 times?
Many a
right?
times.
Like, it's not rocket science. I love the people who drive. I love all the short clips where like, they're driving an electric car and somebody pulls up to the gas station and they're like, what are you doing? And like, it's kind of funny. But I also love the people that use generators to keep their electric cars going. So they pull up with a generator in the back of their electric car. It's kind of funny. As a guy in the Northeast, as you mentioned, I always tried not to use my horn because that could also instigate things.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know the last time I used my horn. Maybe if someone's at a green light and they're just not going, I like do the lightest, friendliest horn that I can. But I don't think about it. It just feels so aggressive.
Yeah. Not to go into like, I don't know, John Wick land or something, but yeah, like people have definitely got into intersections where people got out of their cars and bad things happened afterwards. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy. So I'll just avoid the horn.
Yeah. I had an Uber driver in New York City. He said, when we place our hand on our horn, it's like a message to our hearts, but you never get out of the car because that's when bad things happen. Got it.
Yeah. Not good. Not good at all. On the food tip. Yeah. I mean, obviously we love our food here in the Northeast. I would suggest, and I usually would do this when I go into a new city, is especially internationally, is I would sign up for a food tour.
Oh, I like that.
And then what happens is you get all the food that like they're best known for, and then you get kind of the tips of like where to go.
I like that. I'm gonna have to take that. I am hoping to go to Europe at the end of this year. So
okay. So I've done so I'm sure there are food tours also here in the US, and sometimes you get a different look at a place that you've already been to.
Okay.
I can imagine what one would be here, like in Philly, because I live here, but should actually look it up and see what the spots are on it. But yeah, I've done them all over the place. They're great because like then you like if you really like something, you go back and like you can actually pick the brain of the person who's usually local to that place and figure out what's going on. Figure out where all the regular people go rather than the touristy people.
Right.
Good stuff is.
So I like
there's a George tip on on the other side. Once you get to Europe, it'll be interesting because you just got to learn all the it's just like currency conversion. It's the first thing. It's like, what am I actually spending? Especially if you go to countries where it's like Iceland and like you're like, I don't even know how to do this, right? I gotta get like a calculator and do the thing. I did go to Prague for the first time this year. That was pretty cool. So that was for the Enable Empower event, which they're doing in Dallas next year. So surprise, it's in your backyard, but at
Maybe.
least on the US side. But it, 16 hours of travel and like trains and flights. We finally got the product because it was so expensive for some reason. And you ask my buddy Alec, he's on more planes than he probably wanted to admit, and probably not in the seats that he likes to spend his time in. But I didn't care. But it was definitely a nice, like almost a blast of the past. I really enjoyed it. So put that on your list if you don't have it.
Got it.
So let's circle back to like the technology part of the game here, because there's a little bit of that sprinkled in here somewhere. Do you feel, and again, this is a feeling thing, right? Not asking you to like pull a statistic out of your head, but do you feel that generally people have an idea on what they need to do to really like have a security plan as an MSP? I think a lot of people fake it till they make it, at least make it sound like they know what they're doing, but do they really? What's your gut feeling? Like, do you feel like most people have an idea and a strategy? Do you feel people are still trying to figure it out? Do some people just have nothing? Like, what does the landscape from your view look like?
Yeah, so the tools that we offer actually are something that we just flat out ask people, what process do you have in place for rotating your admin passwords? How are you verifying the identification of people who call in? And I mean, honestly, the answer we get is, oh, we don't really do that. Or like, we're supposed to do something, but we don't really have something in place. So in that note, I don't even know if it's a feeling, it's just a reality of, no, there's not really things in place. They a lot of times acknowledge that their security is not where it needs to be, but it's also just something that MSPs have so much on their plates all the time. And so it kind of just gets set on the back burner. I think that there's definitely, things are getting better. A lot of these conferences are cybersecurity based. And, one MSP in a group of them gets on something, they give their feedback, and then the rest of the group follows suit. So I definitely think it's improving. This year alone, we've seen a lot of like, that's my main focus right now is more cybersecurity. Also, compliancy regulations are getting stricter. So I'd say I definitely think it's getting better. But yeah, a little bit fake it till you make it, a little bit I just don't have time for that right now. And also a little bit of I just don't even know what would solve that problem that I have.
Okay, so put guesstimate percentages here, right? Of 100% of the people that you run into so far this year, half of the people have a plan and the other half are still figuring it out. Is it 33% seem to have a good idea? The next 33% are still figuring out. The last 33% got nothing. I don't know. Give me a guess.
I like the 33% mark. I'd say it's definitely not half and half. It's probably closer to that 33.
Okay. Does that surprise you?
No. I think for a lot of business owners, the tactic is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We found a really good rut that we've dug ourselves into that works. And, I have a slide in my presentations that always gets a lot of murmuring through the crowd. People will take pictures of it. And it's a quote that I have picked up along the way. It's that you're not too small to get hacked. You're just too small to make the news. And that's something good. I think a lot of business owners, just kind of assume like, well, I'll be okay. I'm too small for that to matter, for me. Or it's like, unfortunately, that's not the case. And sometimes it takes a really scary wake up call and, reacting instead of being proactive. But yeah.
No, that sounds like that's a good slide. I think people should incorporate that into their whole thing, right?
Yeah.
There's the truth to it. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Do you get the feeling that some people are getting to the point where they're like, I've been doing this for a long time, and this security thing is now like its own ball game, and I'm tapping out. I can't do it.
Yeah, I definitely say we run into people who are just like, meh about it. And it's the same, what I was told about this theory of like, people always cut their Thanksgiving ham, but nobody ever understood why. Like they just cut it, and they're like, well, this is how we've always done it. So they asked their mom, like, why did you always cut it? And she was like, I don't know, that's just how we did it. And they got back far enough that the great grandma was just like, oh, well, my original pan was too small, and so I had to cut the ham to fit it in there. But people just continue doing it because that's what you're supposed to do, and that's what's always worked for you, and you never thought to question why or to wonder if you were compliant and safe.
Fair enough. I think, talking to a bunch of people, that I think in the next 2 years, you're gonna see a lot of people sell their MSPs. I really get the feeling that that's like, you have people that put in 20, 25,
Yeah.
30 years in the industry, has a lot of vacations lost, a lot of time that they didn't
Sleepless
spend doing
nights.
things. Yeah. And like, I think security has really been like, I don't know, straw that broke the camel's back finally, right? They're like, all right, I don't know if I have it in me to relearn an entire new thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's just package it up, clean it up, and call it a day. And I feel like there's, I don't know if a bump is the right word, but there's definitely going to be, I think, an abnormally high, I'm
A
looking
spike.
to sell over the next year or two.
Yeah. So if we have the 33, probably that 1%, maybe a little bit more. I definitely say I've talked to people, I've had conversations where they're just like, it's getting to be too much. I'm honestly getting ready to sell. So that's definitely something I've been hearing just with people who talk to me about it. I agree.
Yeah. And, I think part of the problem is that, and again, there's a lot of smart people out there, the Matt Lees of the world, right? Who are like, you need to change the way that you look at everything that you're doing, because you just weren't, like, it wasn't ingrained in everybody how to do things the way that it needed to be done to prevent what's happening today from the bad guys and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that, to your point, everybody's learned granularly all up until this point, and now they have to go backwards and redo a lot of the stuff that they do on a day to day. And I think that's kind of the scary proposition.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit, I definitely get the feeling from both sides. The other part of it is, I don't know for what reason why this industry hasn't figured out, like, for the last, I don't know, 20 years, as long as I've been in it. Hiring and retaining, it seems to be like still in the top 5 things that keep on getting brought up over and over and
Yeah.
over again. It seems like from a security standpoint, it's such a, like, a lot of the open jobs out there do target security and cybersecurity in some way. And so, like, all of a sudden now, is that affordable for your business, right? Like when you're competing against mega companies, right, that are hiring for similar roles.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely stressed out more than normal. So I don't know what you're hearing in that front, but I hear that it's just a outprice compared to what they can actually afford, which forces everybody to do the outsourcing on this part, right, to somebody, some third party somewhere. And I think there's a little bit of, closing a thought here, uneasiness that they can't control that part.
Yeah.
What do you hear?
So yeah, I don't think I can really speak to like that back half of it that you mentioned, but I would definitely say I've seen a lot of sessions on agendas and abstracts on hiring people who will stay, retaining top talent, and nurturing the employees that you do have, because it does seem to be kind of an epidemic, at least as long as I've been around. I don't remember where I was going with that, but definitely hiring and maintaining who you do have has been a topic of conversation this entire time. And, something that we help with is, whenever you have someone who has access to all of your privileged information, then you let them go. Like, it's a whole headache to have to change and be like, what did they have access to? Where, what could they have remembered that they could take elsewhere? So that's something that, like, obviously we focus on because that's something we can help with, but I can also see like why hiring is such a headache for MSPs, because you have to go through so much. You're sharing so much sensitive information, and obviously training takes a lot of time. And just for someone not to stick around, like, that's scary and hard. but also outsourcing is scary and hard, and letting go of that is tough. Then also that transition of having their hands in everything, but they're hiring because they need it, and suddenly they're a little more hands off, and like that's really hard and different. I think hiring is definitely a big pain point in the industry.
Yeah. They always say, like, can the business run by itself if you're not there, right? And I think
Right.
for a lot of MSPs, like up to a certain maturity level, the answer is no, right? Like they
Right.
can disappear for a vacation, maybe, but like could they be
Maybe.
out for 6 months and will the thing still be looking the same? Maybe not, right?
Yeah.
Like replacing yourself in your company is probably the hardest thing. Like are you gonna be able to get somebody that's as tied in as you are when it's like you started it, right? And you're bringing somebody
Right.
else behind you to do it?
Right. It's not their baby.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know. I think that's the biggest, hardest part of why MSPs hit up glass ceiling in the industry, right? Like
Yeah.
they get it to a certain point and they just either can't afford to bring somebody in to be that like responsible person that's running everything, or like they just don't know how to get past a certain level of people tied into the organization where they're not really touching everything.
Yeah.
I wonder if a lot of that is because a lot of the people in this industry didn't necessarily get formally trained, right? Like I'm not saying higher education is all that, right? We all know all the stories that we've all heard of, of course, the recognizable run, right? Like Dell and, Facebook and all these big names that we've heard. Like these people didn't finish college and go start companies, right? They
Right.
started companies, in lieu of college or anything like that. But I think a lot of the interesting part in this industry is even if people did go through a training, formal, education path, did they learn about managing people? Well,
Right.
I'd say a lot of people, the answer is no.
Right. And it's
But
one thing to be good at your job, and it's another to be good at leading people and also
correct.
doing your job, for sure.
So I'm curious, like moving forward, right? The people that are not, hey, I'm ready to sell my company, I'm tapping out, I'm not going to learn this next generation of thing. So you got the people behind them, right? Like not quite new, not quite old, they're kind of like in the thick of things. I wonder how much effort would or received if these people would learn how to actually be a leader, right? Be a manager, like know how to grow, like build up people. I don't think people know how to do that, but like without some guidance.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point, which those people could, like right now, be learning. All of us, honestly, could probably learn how to be a little bit better to the people that we work with and working together more um, efficiently. Um, I will say I do think that the workforce has become a little bit more empathetic. Just kind of with the way, I mean, it is a social trend, but people talk about mental health and taking mental health days. Working out and like being active is a little bit more encouraged. Uh, I'd say like I think it could be on a positive trend of a more inclusive and supportive workforce is on the horizon.
Yeah, that goes back into that whole generational thing, right? I
Yeah.
do think that just like yeah, we joke about this with all the international people that we run into, right? Like United States is a big country, right? The Northeast works differently than I think the South, than I think differently than the West Coast,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even the North Central, right? Like I think you could break this country up into a lot of different concepts,
Regions. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So as a guy who born and raised here in the Northeast, feel like we're a little bit like, hey, if you're anywhere, like get on the move, let's go, let's keep the pedal down, don't stop unless you have to refuel, and at that point can you do that on your own? I think things are a little bit slower down in your part of the world, right? Like I know that we say that, but then Texas and Florida are like probably the states that are being most emigrated to out of the rest of the 50 states. So I think it's being a little bit blended more than probably it's been in the past. But how do you, and maybe this is very much your opinion question.
Okay.
Technology companies are often like related to, it's like call 911, right? Like 911 is not allowed to not answer, right? Like they need to pick up. I thought that was the whole point. So if we're always on this on call, got to put out the fire, like you're the emergency services people, how do you fit in the mental health and the, other part of this in order to balance the workforce?
Yeah. Well, one, I have called 911 and the line was busy and I thought that that was not allowed. There was literally a telephone pole on fire and I was just like, something's literally burning. Why is Dallas police not answering? They ended up coming around the corner before I tried to dial again. So they were on it. But I think about that a lot. And this is actually kind of a relevant topic. Morgan and I's most recent episode that we are in the process of publishing is actually about burnout and balancing startup life and working in this industry and also being a human being who needs to take time off sometimes. And it's definitely something I feel that a lot of us haven't figured out. Truthfully, it's far too easy to just keep going and going and going. And for me personally, I know I pushed it too far when I start sleeping through my alarm. And that's when I'm like, crap, okay, like I've gotta like set some time aside, gotta rework things. I think being communicative and open with your team and passing things off where they can be passed off is super beneficial. I worked with high schoolers for a very long time. I managed a snow cone shop for 11 years. And one of the things I always told them when they were new was that if you're having trouble, you have to speak up because I can't help you if I don't know something's wrong. And I need to take that my own advice sometimes. And, a lot of times someone else has the bandwidth and they don't even realize that, you're drowning in what you've got going on. So being open and communicative is definitely, I think, super valuable in this topic. And maybe it's personally, with your spouse or whoever you live with, just be like, hey, I've got a lot going on with work. Like, can we rebalance things and how we're holding responsibilities right now? Of course, easier said than done, but I think that's probably one of the first steps in recharging.
Yeah, it is a very real topic.
Yeah.
And like we hear about burnout all the time, especially when people switch jobs, right? They're like, yeah, I just couldn't do it anymore. I needed to change scenery, needed to change pace. I jokingly always bring this, we always hear about this when people switch sports teams, right? Like, hey, he needed, it's a great player, but he just struggled in that city. He needed to change of scenery, right? Like we always get that tagline. Because they always say Philadelphia is a hard sports city to play in. And I'm like, hey man, like if you show up and you do the work, yeah, we give you a hard time because it's like, you're my brother. I'm allowed to pick on you. Nobody else is, kind of thing.
Nobody
but
else
like,
is.
if you don't do the work, then we're absolutely going to let you know, kind of thing. And like, I
Yeah.
guess that's kind of how we're wired here in Philadelphia. But back to the concept, right? Like, I don't know, mental health days. I don't, put whatever term you want to it. Like, we don't really talk about that. It's kind of like a faux pas, if that's.
Yeah, I'd agree. I can also say I've never taken one. I feel like if I were to attempt to take one, I would just stress about the work that I wasn't doing. So I think that those could probably use a little bit of tweaking in how we look at them, how we think about them, how we do them, how we talk about them, all of that. Yeah, that's definitely not a perfect science for sure.
Yeah. I think from setting up the system side of this, right? The person like writing hey, here's how many days you get every year, and this how many just time you're allowed to get paid to take off, that kind of thing. I don't know. I guess I haven't spent enough time talking to the companies that have like unlimited time and like how that actually works.
I've worked in a place with unlimited and
okay.
It was interesting. Because the people who were taking advantage of it were kind of looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
And then the year ended and I'd only taken like 4 days and it was like, wow, I didn't utilize that, but it's definitely very tricky. I don't think there's a really good balance for that right now either.
Yeah. like as all things go, right? Like you create a system, people are gonna abuse it.
Right. Take
Uh,
advantage of it, use
and
their
then you get
loopholes.
the small population affecting the bigger one kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, right? Like where the balancing point is. I should ask more questions about this because I would be afraid to give people unlimited time.
I like that you're curious though. Like you said, I appreciate that about you.
I surely don't know everything. I'll tell you that right away. Some
Mhm.
people think I know everything because that's how I come off. I know when I talk about something, like pretty good to be pretty. I want to be confident about what I'm saying, but
Absolutely.
like if I'm way off and I'm like I don't have an answer, like I wouldn't want to tell you something wrong because I'd be guessing.
Yeah.
So I think everybody needs to like constantly be learning. I think isn't that the whole thing, right? Like,
Amen.
but I think people who aren't willing to learn from other people all the like I always tell the story of my early days. I was just gonna learn the hard way every step. And like
Mhm.
you get beat up that way, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not an easy route. And quite frankly, I wish if I had that DeLorean and I could go tell younger George, reach out for you should have reached out for help earlier in the process so that you could have skipped a couple steps
Yeah.
rather than, I'm not saying cut a corner, just like you wouldn't have had to have learned those things the way that you did because you would have had an option where you thought you didn't kind of thing. And like,
Absolutely. I don't think that's cutting corners. It's using your resources, using who's around you, who can help you, who's been there. I like that.
yeah. Pete jumps in. He says, interesting approach. I've been digging, trying to figure out a balance for people in production. Also thinking about limiting some of the team for a 4-day work week. Yeah, Pete. I mean, back to somebody, you're in a chair where you create the system, right? The policy.
Yeah.
The 4-day work week's definitely been in the experimental news headlines for a few years, right? Like just make them longer days. I guess the idea is that these people are already working in a lot of cases extra. And
Yeah.
so if you give them the 3-day, weekend, they kind of recharge faster. A lot of people have also said instead of building 3 consecutive days in a row, doing maybe like one of those days midweek, right? And then 2 of those days being like that way it's not all consecutive. It kind of breaks up your week a little bit.
Yeah.
um it's I'm thinking to myself, right? Like when I get into a groove, if I keep on starting and stopping, it hurts my production. That's me
Yes.
personally, right? Like once
Yeah.
my brain's turned on, I'm on something, I want to keep going until like I'm out of fuel. But
Yeah.
Pete says stats say many of them don't take it anyway. They still work the day even though they don't have to. Yeah, I think I'm a worst case scenario guy. I like to just think about if everybody did it this way, what would it look like, right? All those crazy parties we always put on. I always think about the rain plan, right? You were in Orlando, you were in
I
the
was
hurricane force winds, right?
the
Like,
hurricane
what if
party. I was there.
God, you want to talk about, I had to need a recharge after that one.
You deserved it after that.
I think I go into every event and I'm like, what happens if it's like that, right? What
Yeah.
if the worst possible weather conditions are there? Can you like, what does your plan look like? So like I approach that the same way everything else that same way, meaning like if we created a plan where everybody gets 3 days off and it's a 4-day work week, like then go and look at everybody's PTO time. How do they then apply that to the 3-day work week? Does that break open things? I don't know. I'm always thinking about at the end of the day, we're servicing people, right? Our customer, whoever that is, expects us to be able to deliver the product or service that we're offering. Can we still do that effectively in that model? Like that's how I think backwards. And I'm like not trying to like take the human side of it and push it off to the side. Actually, it's the opposite, right? Like if for some reason now with the same workforce, we can't help our customer, are we now forced into doing something that we didn't expect?
Sure.
So
I have noticed working with Canadian companies that they like a good 3-day weekend, like at least once a month. And that has always been like, I think a really good balance. Maybe not every week, it's not feasible, but once a month, a good 3-day weekend, you've got your productive day, you've got your rest day, and then a day for whatever. Like it is really nice. But I feel like if it became standard, it probably wouldn't be that same balance that it is now. I feel like right now it's a commodity, and so we make the most of it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point. Pete says in the end, take care of the people and they'll take care of your client.
Yeah.
Yep, agree. Just got to be there though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's catch 22, right? Can't help your customer if they're not available. As I joke with Jimmy when he was on, we did our session earlier. I said, and it's a really Philly thing, right? It's like the best ability is availability, and then Jimmy went off the rocker because that very much applies to Philly sports. It's true, right? Like if you're not there, you're not on the field, I can't use you when I need you, then you're on the bench. You can't help me right now. So
Speaking of Philly
The
sports,
sports
I like the new green jerseys.
they're not new, they're old.
Oh,
They're
see, I
a
don't know my
throwback.
Philly sports history.
Yeah, way back, before while Little George was on the come up. This is the color, right? In the like
Oh, I
80s
like
and
that.
90s. Yeah. So then when the current owner came in like mid 90s, he's like, I'm gonna change the color. And that's the color that right? Every time the
Yeah, the
Eagles
kind of
win,
teal.
it's like that. They call it midnight green is the
Huh?
green that the Eagles like. It's like green, black, and like I think silver somewhere in there, white sometimes.
Mhm.
So this is like Kelly green is
Yeah.
the thing. And so apparently the owner of the Eagles is not as well known as Jerry Jones. But the owner of the Eagles said, I'm going to bring it back. It took him from 94 until 2023 to bring it back.
Wow.
Yeah, because apparently the NFL doesn't like to change the helmets mid-season that you're
Yeah.
used in the game. And because like it's almost like a sneaker, right? Like your helmet
bad
and
juju.
like you gotta, if you get like a brand new sneaker and you start walking around, you get a blister, right? Kind of
Right.
thing. So
Right.
so apparently they got approval to have their alternate helmets, the Kelly green this year. So that's how they're able to bring it back finally.
Nice.
So you will see a lot of reference to
I do like a Kelly green.
Yeah, it's kind of close to it. You'll get a lot of reference to that. And that's why people were tailgating all of the pro shops to pick up the Kelly green jerseys.
Oh,
That's why I posted on my Instagram feed, which I like to be, at least funny with. I was like, no work today, guys. And it was like a line around the block. I was like, it's old school, right? Forget the internet. We're buying concert tickets this way.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. There's something to be said about buying it and having it in your hands right then.
It did feel different, didn't it? Before like the 82 ticket master fees, like that look like a phone bill every time you're buying a ticket.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
just you don't have the little tangible memento anymore. It's just sad. It's just
So that's the
screenshot
thing
on your
now.
phone.
They will charge you for that.
Yeah.
Like you can buy it after the fact so that you have a ticket.
Right. I've definitely seen people online. They make them and they'll send it to you. And I'm a crafty girl, but I don't care that much.
Yeah, there's still people in Eagles land that are old school, and they, even though all the tickets are supposed to be digital, they go to the box office and have them print all the tickets out.
I have been to one Cowboys game and I won them at an event, and I did keep the ticket because it's really neat to have that. So
Well,
I don't know if I would.
Some of your favorite Texan people in the sandbox are trying to convince me to come to Dallas. I flipped it around on them. I was like, how about you come to Philly? Dallas at Eagles. What do you think? So
I think that one happens on my birthday. So
Dallas at Eagles?
Yeah.
Well.
That'd be a lot of fun.
More than welcome to bring that show into South Philadelphia.
My dirty 30. That would be a lot of fun.
I need to circle it and let's talk about like I can make it a thing. We bring the whole crowd up. Just saying.
Y'all are listening.
Oh, now that I know it's your birthday, that just changed the game altogether.
It does, I know.
All right. Well, this session was absolutely 100% recorded. Hopefully you noticed I spent the first part of this about you, the person.
You did.
So there you go. I already had that in the thought trap pattern there before we even got started. So there you go.
I thought about that while I was talking about it. I was like, that's kind of what this feels like.
Yeah, how about that? So where do people find information on your podcast?
We are actually a podcast on LinkedIn. We have a Facebook group and an Instagram page. You can find it from Morgan or I's LinkedIn as well. We tweet about it here and there. I am at Kelcye at Work, and she is at Geek Mode Mo. I guess it's X now, whatever, it's Twitter. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on, and thanks everybody for participating.
Awesome. No, thank you for coming on. This was recorded. We're gonna post it up at mspinitiative.com under sessions. I'm sure I'm gonna run into you in like 2 seconds at some event somewhere.
Honestly, yeah.
Until then, stay cool in your triple-digit Dallas, Texas heat.
Somehow I managed.
Air conditioning and water. That's my best advice for you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.